Several newspaper owners have blocked their publications from endorsing presidential candidates this year. Those papers include the Washington Post and the LA Times, and Gannett, which owns a number of papers across the country, including the Arizona Republic. Gannett is allowing endorsements for state and local races, but not for president. Earlier today, we learned more from Nicole Carroll from ASU's Media Enterprise. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time on this. What do you make of these major, and I mean major, newspapers and gatekeepers and the whole nine yards here deciding that they're not going to endorse this presidential election?
I think it's as much about timing as it is about the endorsements. Newspapers throughout their history have gone back and forth on, are they going to be partisan or nonpartisan, endorsed, not endorsed. People may not know it, but the Arizona Republic started as the Arizona Republican back in 1890. It was a party newspaper, and not till 1930 did it become the Arizona Republic. So there's a history of going back and forth on these endorsements. The problem with the LA Times and the Washington Post is when they did it, that both editorial boards said they had written endorsements for Kamala Harris. Both editorial boards had been writing critical editorials of Donald Trump all the way through. And so for suddenly, 11 days before the election, to be told by their owners that they couldn't do it was what really, bothered people, because it really, fairly or not, makes people wonder, how much control do these owners have? And, are the rest of the editorials truly the vision of the editorial board, or are the owners having more influence than they thought on those decisions?
Yes, in the Washington Post, they said that the quote was, "We're going back to our roots pre-1980, I guess." And the quote was, "Character and courage in service to the American ethic." What does that even mean in this context?
The Post is in a particular situation because it's here in DC, and they've been doing very aggressive coverage on the candidates, and they've been doing very critical editorials of Donald Trump. The other thing to remember is that Donald Trump has threatened the press. He has talked about, pulling back press freedoms and the First Amendment, and obviously has a very bad relationship with the media. So when they pulled their endorsement, it wasn't just pulling an endorsement. I think a lot of people felt that their owner didn't have support of journalism. So I think they're in a unique position there. But like I said, papers have gone back and forth on to endorse or not to endorse. Here's some numbers from this year. I thought this was really interesting. I'm going to make sure I get them right. So this is the American Presidency Project. And back in 2008, 92 of the 100 largest newspapers endorsed one way or the other. By 2020, only 54 endorsed. This year, according to Nieman Lab, who's been doing the research, 3/4 of the top 100 newspapers are not endorsing. So goes far beyond the Washington Post and the LA Times.
Well, and I wanted to bring up Gannett as well, because Gannett basically told its newspapers and its news organizations, it's okay for local and state, just don't do presidential. What's the reasoning behind that? What are we talking about here?
Well, I don't want to speak for Gannett, but just looking at all these organizations' decisions, many are coming to the same conclusion, that it's fine to do local, just don't do president, which strikes some people as odd, because an editorial board and an opinion page, which is separate than the news division, and I don't think a lot of people understand that they are completely separate, that they can opine or write about anything except for the highest office in the land. The reason for that is a couple of things. The people who have decided against endorsements say it doesn't make a difference anyway. They say it alienates too many readers, and with the struggling news industry, newspapers, news organizations need every reader they can get. And they also think that they have a bigger influence on local elections than they do on national elections. So again, Gannett's not alone. A lot of news organizations are going the same way. And again, I think there's very good reasons for editorials, very good reasons. Historically, newspaper editors and opinion writers do a ton of research. They interview candidates, they interview issues. And so they really just want to put out an expert opinion. They're not telling you how to vote. They're just saying, here's one expert opinion to put in your series of discussions. On the other side, I understand that in this climate, if you're going to alienate half your readers, that may not be a good decision, because it could impact your ability to do further journalism in the public interest. So I honestly can see the arguments for and against endorsements. Again, I think the problem here was the timing, and by pulling it 11 days before the election, after the editorials had been written, it struck a lot of people as owners getting involved in opinions and endorsements when that's really not their role.
And especially as you referred to, I guess Donald Trump has had previous run-ins with Jeff Bezos. He's threatened to go after Bezos' businesses. And I guess Blue Origin, a Bezos company, they got a $3.4 billion contract going on here. And it just doesn't smell right, Nicole.
You know, and as journalists, we have to guard against even the appearance of impropriety. That's why we have such strict ethics codes. And Jeff Bezos wrote an essay that you can go and read, and he talked about he wished it had happened sooner, that this had nothing to do with his companies. Even though his executives met with Trump the same day, they decided not to endorse. He said, you know, trust me, I'm a principled man. But the problem is, to your point exactly, is the appearance. It's the appearance of influence. It's the appearance of one of the Washington Post writers said they look like we're preemptively bending the knee to the new president. And that's a dangerous place for newspapers to be when credibility is what they sell. Credibility is what brings readers to them.
And again, with the LA Times, I mean, the question of timing, this could have been done months ago. This could have been done years ago, and yet it's done right up to the very tip of this election.
That's exactly right. And that's what they're having a problem with as well. And the editorial page editor says, you know, it just really calls into question all of our judgment. Like you've been pretty, you know, writing the same editorials about pro-Harris and some of the problems with Trump all along. Why did you decide at the very end? Why did your owner decide that? And so again, they're upset that they wonder, will the public trust their editorials again? Will the public think that the that the owners are having influence in the future when the owners clearly had influence this time around?
Last question. You gave some numbers as far as editorial endorsements from major newspapers over the years, obviously declining big time this go around. Is this just a moment of time, or is this a trend that will continue?
I think it's a trend that will continue, but like you've seen, you know, the news business and culture have been on a pendulum swing. We started in 1890 with, you know, the Arizona Republican, and it became more center, and then it became, you know, people began doing endorsements, and now they're deciding not to do endorsements. So I do think that's the trend for right now, but who knows what will happen in the future.
I'll bet you there's all sorts of folks back there talking about this Post decision.
Oh, absolutely. You saw they had written that they lost 250,000 subscribers. So a lot of people upset about it. And again, I think you can make your own decision whether to endorse or not to endorse. It's the timing and the appearance of impropriety that has everybody upset.
Nicole Carroll, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.